Welcome. My name's David Rathman, and this is Chris Johnson. We're going to be talking about repair and maintenance planning today. We're going to be talking about, this is all this is about is disciplined ownership of your store. And so we hope to be informative and really kind of to hit home that by no means are you guys on your own. This information is here to help you. So this is here for you. And so my disclaimer is that this presentation is not going to be a set of requirements or do's or don'ts. It's really just make a good decision. So you guys are MPs, and making good decisions is going to teach your future MPs, your assistant managers, how to make good decisions. And so really all we're asking is make good decisions. We're not telling you have to do X, Y, Z. Just make good decisions. So purchasing equipment, how many people here have had to go through a LEAP process? So a quarter of you.
That's good.
Yeah. So when you have a LEAP project, which is a major repair equipment replacement, gather all the information and run it by Chris. This guy's an expert, and he knows the process and markups for most of the major equipment. So we had one not too long ago, and the guy had set something up for a new water heater. Chris looks at the price of the water heater and said, that's crazy. The price of the water heater should be X, Y, Z. The plumber is charging us this. So again, this is just common sense. Gather everything you need to gather. Give Chris a call, and go through it with him, because he's going to be able to help you through it. Treat every dollar as a personal one. And the key here is going to be, is it outside the hash marks? So is everybody familiar with Troy? Have you all heard Troy's talking about the hash marks on a football field? It's kind of some guidelines. So if you just ask yourself, is this decision going to affect food quality? Is it going to affect safety? Or is it going to affect the speed of service? If the answer is yes, then we probably need to talk. If the answer is no, then you're probably making a good decision. So again, it's just, is it going to affect the brand? Is it going to affect the customer? And a perfect example is Turbo Chef versus a Lincoln. They're both great ovens. Lincoln's significantly slower. Lincoln doesn't cook the food quite as well. So I'm going to save some dollars and I'm going to get a Lincoln instead of a Turbo Chef. It's not inside the hash marks. So the Turbo Chef is faster, it cooks better food, so that's kind of where some of those decisions come from. So if you're not sure, again, that's what we're all here for, and we'll just talk about it. But all of our equipment has been tested and vetted, and most of the major equipment comes set to Jason's Deli spec, so there's no guesswork needed. So just trust the process.
All right, so I'm going to talk about, most of you are familiar with most, if not all, of these bullet points up here. So, starting off with bar green. So he mentioned that all the equipment that we get is set per our spec. Bar green handles that for us. They're our middleman between the manufacturer and us. So we get everything through them. Ovens, Lincolns. Even if you want to buy a Lincoln, Turbo Chefs, Blodges, anything and everything equipment-wise, Bar green has it. So there are other avenues to purchase equipment, but we highly recommend going through Bar green. They take all the guesswork out of it. The warranty's sound. They can provide you with all the ASAs, the authorized service agencies for that particular piece of equipment in the event that you need any warranty work done. They're a really good partner. They've been working with us for years. So anything and everything you need, you can contact them directly. Partstown is, I think we have a little bit of work to do with Partstown, and something I'm going to be working on. So I'm working to try to clean it up a little bit. From what I understand, there's been some frustrations with some of the costs in terms of shipping. It costs a lot to get things from A to B, especially if you're buying one thing. The easy thing is to buy multiple things, but it's not always the case, right? So everybody should have a Partstown login. Your store should have specific information for it, set up for billing and all that. You can get a lot of stuff through them. You can get ladles, you can get smallwares, there's a lot of things that you can get through that site. So you know that it's what we need, it's the right ounces, that it's the right spec for us, because it was the same thing. We went through the set up the account process with them. We made sure they carry exactly what we want them to carry. So there's no guesswork. You don't have to say, oh, well, is this ladle the same as this, or whatever it is. And then so the JD equipment email that comes to me. I'm the only one who monitors that email. It's just a way for me to kind of keep my head screwed on straight. So there's a lot of different. I wear a lot of different hats. So I know with that it's specifically for equipment. So by all means, feel free to email that. Email me directly. It really doesn't matter, because just know that whenever you get a reply, it's coming from me. It just might take me a little bit of time to filter down through it. So Walsh and Simmons, they're our furniture manufacturer and distributor. So all of our furniture except for patio furniture we get through them. So that's anything from chair seats, chair backs, chairs, bar stools, booth seats, all that kind of stuff comes from them. So with all of these, with the exception of the equipment email, you can contact these guys directly. You don't have to go through me. And I can also add Regency to this. This is one that brought up by the last group, Regency Lighting. So we have contacts set up with these different companies that you don't even have to come to me if you don't want to. You can, but we'll get to the national who to call list towards the end of the presentation. All their contact information is on there. So you shoot them an email, it goes out to our rep group. Anybody and everybody that you need that deals with us and our specs and everything that we carry is going to get an email, so they can handle it usually a lot faster than I can. So equipment cost versus longevity. So there's some big pieces of equipment in here that it costs a lot of money. Turbo chefs, for example, water heaters, water softeners, line coolers, AC units. We have national accounts with a few of these folks. We have National Hot Water, who provides our water heaters. So in the event that you have a water heater that goes down, and we're going to share this presentation, right, David?
Yeah.
So you'll get a copy of this. So there's actually a link on the water heaters page that it's a one sheet to National Hot Waters. They put a one sheet together for us that has pricing, it has all the equipment there, all basically the heater kit that comes with it, along with recommended pricing of what it should cost your plumber to install it. So we have good. The point is, we have good relationships with some people for some big pieces of equipment that we could pass the cost savings down to you guys, rather than you buy it locally or buy it with with the vendor. AC units is another good example. So when a company supplies and installs a piece of equipment, there's always a markup on it, and that markup can be anything from 5% to 25%. So we want to make sure that we're getting we're paying the right amount that we need to for a piece of equipment. There's usually some cost savings if we provide and they install. So the point is, if you have something big go down, reach out to me, and then it's something that we could dive into and see if we can find some money to save.
So the bottom line is, think like an owner, avoid costly mistakes. We had those of you that are from Dallas, we had a maintenance guy there that could MacGyver anything, and he was brilliant with tape and wire. He could fix anything. So this guy worked on our microwave oven, and a while later it blew up. It just loud bang, smoke filled the deli. We call the microwave company out, and they come and look at it, and they call me over and said, look at this, and there's a piece of aluminum foil that got bent that he bypassed a magneto fuse with. And I can keep this thing going, and we just, he fashioned a bypass with aluminum foil, and he burned the thing up. So I'm sure everybody's got stories about that. Fairly recently even, a deli that, the walk-in heater, the walk-in cooler, the temperature's a little high, and it's a Sunday evening, and I don't know that I want to pay overtime, and I think we can keep this thing going until Monday morning, and come in Monday morning, and everything in the walk-in's 50 degrees. So this decision to save $400 or $500, $600 cost him $20,000, and we threw everything away. So just lots of those examples, and again, just kind of keeping that stuff in mind. It's think like an owner.
So probably the most important, or I guess the easiest way to save yourself some money on R&M is managing the relationship with the vendor. So these guys are, I always say these guys are people too. Our vendors are their customers, their potential customers. They have families, they can come in and eat. There's a lot of extra that comes into it. So the relationship is extremely important because you also have an opportunity to become, a tier 1 customer. We have tier 1 customers, especially for catering. So these guys do too. I mean, they have the customers that take top priority over everybody else. One of the other ways of doing that is setting up a preventative maintenance program, which I'll get to later. But just managing the relationship itself and just having that human personal interaction makes it personal rather than business. And people tend to get a little bit more invested whenever you take the time to find out how they're doing and make, another thing is mistakes are going to happen. There's going to be times where they thought they fixed something and they didn't. So just like if we put mayonnaise on someone's sandwich and they wanted mustard and they say, well, I'm never going to go back there. We don't need to have that same mentality for our vendors either. It's the most important thing is how they, just like with us, how they handle that mistake, right? So if they own up to it, if they say, hey, the next time we'll come out, we'll fix it, we'll give you a credit, whatever it is, if they address it properly, then you can almost write that off and say, okay, well, that's, I appreciate you handling it, let's just move on and pretend like it didn't happen. But on that same note, if it continues to happen, if you keep having issues, if they keep coming out and can't fix stuff, then you need to look at finding somebody else. So the relationship goes both ways. So we need to invest just as much as we expect them to invest in us. So what am I missing? So another good point on here is don't burn bridges. So in the repair and maintenance field, whether it's electricians, plumbers, handymen, HVAC, especially with refrigeration and AC because we use them so much, it really hurts the relationship whenever you shop them out. Like if they provide a quote, especially with a customer or with a company that you have a good relationship with that's constantly in your deli doing work, if they give you a quote for something and then you say, well, I'm gonna check your price, especially if you tell them that, or even if you don't and you sit on it and check them out, it hurts that relationship. So, and if you, for whatever reason, like I mentioned before, if they make a mistake and you say, oh, we're gonna move on, I'm not gonna do business with you anymore, then there's only, especially in smaller markets, there's only so many service companies, whatever trade you're looking for. So eventually you're gonna have to come right back around to square one. And then that it's already gonna be a bumpy relationship. And also, we've been fired before. Vendors have said, we don't wanna do business with you guys anymore. Too difficult, your expectations are way too high, you expect the world, you expect the world and you don't give us anything in return. You beat up every single invoice that we submit. So like I said, it's just about, in all trades, about building that relationship and making it more than just, a number that you call whenever something's broken. You just try a little bit harder with it and you'll get a lot more, out of it.
How many of you guys were with us before our current produce program? Just a handful, yeah. So before our current produce program, we used to shop our own produce. So the delis could use whoever they wanted, and they would call up and Jason, we need a price list, and Jason would send a price list, and Scott, I need a price list, and we'd, okay, Scott, if you can bring strawberries down by 7 cents, because Jason's beating you there, and we'd beat him up real bad, and finally he'd get it going, and we'd use him for 3 weeks and for a month, and he'd bring in pallets of strawberries, and then Jason would say, guess what, I'm gonna lower my strawberries 10 cents. We'd drop Scott, we'd go with Jason. This guy'd get stuck with a pallet of strawberries, stop doing business. So we blew through pretty much every produce vendor there was in Dallas, and we'd go back around and try to rekindle the relationships, and it's just like what he's saying. We burned bridges, and it got to the point where there were very few produce companies that were even willing to do business with us by the time we got done with them. So it's just that's something to really keep in mind.
When you get down to the sheer numbers of it, if you compare, if you were to go to 5 companies that you've never done business with, there's going to be like a $10 or $15 difference in between them, whether it's in a trip charge or an hourly rate. There's kind of an industry standard for these things. So that's where the human part comes in. That's where the building of the relationship comes in. And whatever, especially if you're trying to switch companies, especially for AC, refrigeration, because like I said, we use it all the time. Then invite their service manager in for lunch. Sit down, have a sandwich with them, and just talk through. Okay, well, what do you guys? What's a realistic expectation for you? What is an emergency? What can we? If we call you for our walk-in cooler down, when can I expect you? How many texts do you have? Just start asking questions about the business, and you'll open that door, and then they'll remember that whenever you call them. They'll remember this is a good dude. I want to make sure we help them out so we can keep their business. Because believe me, in this side of things, it's really hard to find people that are really good to work with. So if you can do that, then you really make an impression on these folks. So this is everybody can, I'm sure, at some point in time relate to this. When do you stop repairing something and buy another one? You know, that goes for ice cream machines, it goes for line coolers, it goes for, you know, ovens, it goes for anything, right? Water heaters. So I wish there was a magic number that I could tell you for every piece of equipment and say, you know, if you get a repair, you know, if there's a sliding scale, right? If it's 5 years old and it's, you know, 40% of the cost, then you should repair it or replace it or whatever. There's not. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that come into it. Repair history is the most important thing. If you keep dumping money into something and you get a big, you know, quote to repair it, then you should probably replace it. So what I always use is that 50% mark. So where the years kind of come into play on that. I mean, if it's the first year, you know, first year out of warranty, I guess, and then you get, you know, if it's a $4,000 piece of equipment, you get a quote for, you know, $3,000 to replace it or to repair it, then, you know, $800 more than you just get a brand new one, restart that warranty term. So, you know, whatever the year, I use that 50% mark to kind of gauge it, I guess. But it's really good to have a conversation on these things, especially whenever you start getting, you know, even in the 30%. You know, just ask, you know, if you don't know what a piece of equipment costs, I mean, that's an easy answer. I mean, I have that information in front of me. Just let me know, and then say, hey, I got a proposal for $3,000 or, you know, for $2,500 to repair a Lincoln that costs $4,000. Okay, well, we should buy another Lincoln or look into getting a turbo Chev. So it's more just the, you know, like we talked about before, just communication. Just, you know, that's what I'm here for. Just, you know, whatever information you guys need, just let me know, and we'll talk it through. But we end up throwing a lot of money away and just keep, okay, well, it's, you know, $500 here, $800 there, you know, $1,000 here, and you look back and over the past year, you could have bought 2 of them. So keeping track, and I think we'll touch on that later. Keeping track of what you spend your money on is a really good useful tool, because when it happens again, you're like, oh man, well, how much did I spend on it? Especially if you use multiple companies to repair your equipment, and it's really hard to pull invoices from multiple companies and then sit down and do the math. And okay, well, they came out and they fixed my AC unit and they fixed the line cooler, and you got to try to back that stuff out. So it's really good just to keep a running total of it, especially if you start seeing that it's a recurring problem. So a lot of money wasted on just fixing a lemon. Preventative maintenance. I know there's some mixed feelings on this. So a good PM program, I mean, ultimately leads to a reduction in the chance of equipment's breakdown. That's more on the cold side than the hot side. The hot side, we found that there's some benefit to it, but the cold side, I guess we should preface this by saying that you don't have to do a PM. You don't have to do a preventative maintenance program. It's not required by anybody, but it's a really good, responsible business decision to maintain your equipment before it's broken. It's an easy way to get out in front of any problems. Like I said, especially on the cold side, there's so much airflow with compressors and condensers that if your coils are clogged, if your filters are dirty, if belts are broken, all the stuff that makes that thing run, if it's showing signs of wear and tear, if it's clogged, it can't breathe, then you run the risk of burning it up. So paying a couple $100 a month for a good PM program that happens 4 times a year is an easy way to save an emergency trip charge for a down walking cooler on a Friday night, and you're paying $3,000 for somebody to come out and fix something that, you know, you could have got out in front of. So like I said, it's not required, but I highly recommend having a good PM program set up. If you have a refrigeration company, especially an AC refrigeration company that is doing work for you, and you don't have a PM program set up and they've never offered it to you, I don't want to say shop for someone else, but they should have brought that up to you. Any good refrigeration company is going to recommend a preventative maintenance program. I mean, they make money on it too. It's not about the money side because it's so cheap, but it's just a good way for them to not get backed into a corner by you calling them saying, hey, you know, I got an AC unit that's down, you know, it's August 2nd, you know, I got a dining room full of people and it's 80 degrees in my deli. And then they have to drop whatever they're doing to come out and fix it whenever they could have gotten to take care with the PM program. And also, when they come out for a PM, they see something's broken, then they can fix it. You save some money on a trip charge, save money on that hour requirement for that minimum when they come out. So there's a lot of benefits to it. You know, going back to the vendor management also, they, you know, if you're using your preventative maintenance company to also do your repairs, then they know the equipment, they know you. It's a good way to build that relationship, and it's the fastest way to put you in that tier 1 level where if something goes down, people call you, you know, you get priority over everybody else. You get scooted up to the front of the line, which is a beautiful thing. So PMs are awesome. Do PMs.
But not required.
Not required, but you should do PMs.
Not required.
You should. I said should. So, you know, keep it clean. So the cleaning and maintenance program was a thing. It was a big push a few years ago. It's not a requirement anymore, but it's a really good tool to follow. There's a lot of equipment that needs to be cleaned that you guys can do in-house without having somebody come and do it for you. Hot side, especially with your ovens, your Blodgetts, your Lincolns, your Turbo Chefs, cleaning those ovens, checking those filters and all that, making sure those pieces of equipment can breathe properly is something that's super simple for you guys to do at the store level. So you don't have to follow it, but once again, it's a good tool in place. What I used to do back whenever I was with facilities is I would recommend to a GM at the time to, if you have a junior manager that's looking to be promoted, just put them in charge of that. All R&M issues, all cleaning issues, just give it give it to them. Let them have it, let them own it, and that way one less thing for you guys to have to worry about. So if you want to take that, go for it, but keep things clean. Especially whenever if it's a vent, that vent needs to be cleaned and it can't be pushed against the wall. Things just got to breathe. All the equipment has to breathe, hot or cold. So. Okay, Nick, sorry, got to talk about it. So speaking of, so ADA, just to let everybody know who doesn't know, it's the American Disabilities Act. It covers anything from wheelchair bound, people to blind, deaf, any sort of disability falls under this. So the document that the ADA code document is it's like 500 something pages. There's just anything and everything that you could possibly think of or not think of is going to be covered under this. So I don't want to get into too much detail because there's just a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that can happen. But what I did want to talk about is some of the most, I guess, the most touched points by customers. What they see when they first come in, starting with the door closers. So the requirement is 5-pound pull. I'm not expecting you guys to go get a fishing scale and pull to make sure it reads 5 pounds or anything crazy like that. What I do recommend is if your door is hard to open, then fix it. If it's sticking, if the top part of the door is hitting the other door and you can't pull it without yanking on it. Imagine if you're in a wheelchair trying to pull that door open. It's just a common courtesy, right? And also, going back to AC issues, and that could be a pressure issue. If your doors are hard to open, then you got all that air rushing in from the outside. You got a bunch of hot air rolling in, which is a separate conversation that I won't get into. But either way, it's an addressable issue, and it's the first thing that people see. So if someone's not going in looking to hit us with ADA issues, then that if they see that when they first come in, then that's going to open the door for them. Next thing is floor mats with curled up edges. Not only is that an ADA issue, that's a safety concern. If somebody's walking by and they trip on it, then that's just, nobody wants that. It's too much paperwork, right? So call UniFirst. They can come out and swap out mats for you, no problem, especially if you see that. So, and just so you know, curling it under is not going to do anything. It's going to make it's just going to trip the other way, right? So floor mats, undercounter plumbing covers. This one's a little bit tricky just because it's kind of hard to know what to look for. This really applies to the restrooms. Under the sink in the restroom where the P-trap is and where the water lines come in, there needs to be plumbing covers. It's basically like a foam cover that sits on those pipes. So essentially what it's for is if anybody rolls in a wheelchair, then they're not hitting hard metal, hard PVC, anything that's going to cut or scrape or anything like that. So what it's for is just an extra protection layer. So all of this stuff is available at Home Depot. If you want to do it yourself and just cover that stuff up, go for it. What I recommend doing is getting a plumber out. I always recommend getting somebody out who knows what they're doing because it's a potential safety issue. Then they can take care of it for you. It's pretty simple. Then the pass-through route for wheelchair access. So there's a requirement. There's a width requirement. It's 60 inches for critical path.
48.
40. So I'm not expecting you guys to go around with the tape measure and measure it's really just the path to the doors, the egress, for fire exits and for, customer travel to the restrooms and out the door. So you don't need to go around with the tape measure and make sure it's right. If you can't get a bus cart through with ample room on each side, if you're, constantly running into chairs and things of that nature, then look at just kind of reworking your dining room a little bit. But I'm not expecting you guys to go around and measure all this stuff. It's just something that's easily identifiable. Then the last thing, if you see anybody walking around with a tape measure, taking pictures with a notepad or anything crazy that just doesn't sit right with you, just reach out to me and we can talk about it and see what's going on. I can ask some questions and maybe we can get out in front of it if we need to. It's just, all goes back to the communication. If it doesn't smell right, just give me a shout. We'll talk it through. All right, partner with your property manager. So show of hands, who knows or has a good relationship, or at least even knows who your property manager is? Man, I'm finding this is the second group that I've been surprised about how many know. So that's good. So the just to give you an idea, or give a little bit of an explanation, is the difference between a property manager and a landlord. So the landlord owns the property. Sometimes they are the property manager, but the property manager manages the property, and they don't always own the land, right? That makes sense? So the property manager is in charge for maintaining the property. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because if you ever need any big repairs done, if you need your parking lot restripes, if you need a roof redone, landscaping, parking lot striping, parking lot resurfaced or whatever, they usually have a certain budget that they can spend money on, or a certain amount that they can spend, like a cap. But if it goes over that, they have to reach out to the landlord for approval because it's not their money to spend. The reason why I'm telling you that is because if you're asking for something big or something that takes a little bit of time to plan, then it might take them a little bit of time to go through the necessary channels to communicate through. The reason why I'm saying that is just to give them it might take a little time, so just don't get too fired up if you don't get an email back right away, because they have to go through the proper communication. So that's more for if you don't know who they are and you reach out to them for the first time, but it seems like most of you know, so that really doesn't apply to that. So their role, keep you happy, make the property pretty, maintain it. They're not there to do what we tell them to do. They're there to do it per their spec, per their requirements. So if we ask them to do something and they don't have to do it, then they won't do it. So just a word of caution on that. So they understand what we need, and they know your lease. So if you have any lease questions, then you can ask them. I'll get to it a little bit later, but we have somebody internal that can help with any lease questions that you have. So your role, aside from keeping your customer happy, you're responsible for maintaining your unit, which is basically your four walls, unless your lease specifies otherwise. Sometimes it's your sidewalk, sometimes it's your building facade, sometimes it's the signs, or whatever it is. It's just a good idea. It's a good business practice for you guys to know what's required of you, so that way there's never that gray area. You just know exactly what you're responsible for. And then maintain a face-to-face relationship. If you just know who they are, if you've emailed them, is it Olivia still? Yeah. So if you know who they are and you've probably never had a really good interaction with them, I highly recommend inviting them to lunch. Sit down with them, just have a conversation with them, just get to know them. Once again, they're customers too. I know. So but just because they can make or break a project from my side also. I mean, they can stonewall us they can call the city if we do any sort of project and require permits. I mean, they can do all kinds of crazy stuff. More just open a can of worms that we don't need them to. So you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. So I just highly recommend just bolstering that relationship if you can. And then they know what your local permitting regulations are for anything that you guys want to do, which could be a good thing or a bad thing, like I mentioned.
So really, it's all about accountability and people development. It's holding ourselves accountable, and it's developing the people underneath us, and these are going to be our future MPs. So have a plan. We've got all the tools, and we're going to share this presentation with you. And coming up on the next couple of slides, you're going to see some of the tools that a lot of you know where some of it is. But have a plan, follow the plan. And teach your managers how to think like business owners, because that's really what it's going to boil down to. Is they're going to do what they've learned from the years with you, and you stretch the equipment or you don't. You make good purchases or you don't, and what you don't want to do is perpetuate bad decisions, and making multiple bad decisions. Teaching these guys to make multiple bad decisions is just going to perpetuate the making of bad decisions.
So one of the things that I wanted to do is define the roles of the departments that could directly impact you guys. And those two departments are concept and growth. So first we have Wade Stearns. He's not the director of concept. He is the chief concept officer. That's my fault. That's a typo. So he's over the entire concept department, and from there, concept splits. So we have concept process and concept design. So Kevin Gray over here is the director of concept design. Under the other side is Keith Kemplay, Michelle Martinez, Chelsea Pavey. Who am I missing? Carla Hubert. That's it, right?
Maybe not.
Either way, yeah, so that's a separate conversation. Anyway, so concept design, like I said, Kevin Gray is director of concept design. Under him is me and Eric Mowry. Eric Mowry is our designer, in-house layout specialist / architect / any sort of code issue. He's helped out a lot with this ADA issue. with you, Nick. So just he's a real knowledgeable guy. He puts a lot of the stuff into layouts into CAD to make it look pretty, makes it easy for you guys to understand what's coming. Some of you guys have seen me send a layout for a refresh and any seating changes that we've done. That's what he does. And then there's me, Director of Special Projects and Procurement. So I do all refreshes, remodels, special projects, any sort of facility questions that you guys have. And also with Kevin, I handle the procurement side, which is the FF&E. So Nick McLaughlin, Jamie Cohen, what they were doing. So I'm kind of taking over that as well. And then with growth, so you have Raymond Begno. He's a director of growth. You heard him speak a little while ago. So he has an active role. Like he has an actual position within growth, along with Kimberly Kanier and Nick McLaughlin. Their actual real estate procurement. So they're the ones out finding these spaces, finding the sites, doing market trips and things like that, trying to find these new locations. Then you have Joey Geis, who's director of new construction. Some of you guys know Joey pretty well. He's anything new store, that's all him. He's the one who builds all these things. Then Erica LaRocca. So Erica LaRocca is the one I mentioned before about the real estate contacts. Any question you have about your lease, any contact information that you need from your landlord, she is a wealth of knowledge. So I highly recommend reaching out to her if you have any questions on what your CAM covers, what your responsibilities are that I mentioned a minute ago, and then what your realistic expectations are from your landlord. She can help you answer all those questions in terms of she'll select out what part of the lease and just basically give you a little snippet, so you don't have to comb through a 100-something page lease to try to find this right info. So she's super helpful with that. So any questions on this stuff? Okay.
So a lot of you have seen this. MJ put this out a couple of years ago, and we kind of redid it, and we'll be sharing this presentation with you. But these are all links for some of the tools that you've got available to you, and it's all really good stuff. But the R&M binder, the R&M folder, I know it's a lot of work and it's tedious, but keeping track of equipment repairs is the only way that he's going to be able to help you make a good decision. So if it's going back to when was the last time, how much have you spent working on this thing? I have no idea. How often is it being worked on? I have no idea. He can't help you make a good decision. So if we could just, again, it's not required, but it's going to help you make a good decision. In the who to call sheet, that's going to be a good place for you to start. It's not 100% updated, but it's still in the old regions, but it's going to give you a good place to start, just who to call. Insurance is going to be what the insurance requirements are for bringing on new vendors. So everything you need to know to bring on a new vendor, it's going to kind of tell you what their requirements are. And then some of our national vendors, and that is accurate, is up there. And then again, we've got a capital project and LEAP process up there. So again, just it's a tool for you. Click on it. It's going to tell you. It's going to walk you through a LEAP project. And then the warranty and equipment repair stuff, and we've got the facilities folder link, and so everything you need is right there. So how do R&M costs affect profits? This slide we talked 100 times about its relevance, whether or not we should leave this in, and I thought it was interesting because you can see the trend here from 1.6 in 2015, and it went up in 2016, and then it started coming down. This is year-to-date 2018, and I'm not sure of the relevance, but I think it's just interesting to talk about. I asked Raymond, what caused the 1.72 in 2016, and what's causing the drop, and his thought is that we really started replacing equipment back in 2016, and that's when we really started making those hard decisions to not just keep fixing it, but to start using people that are experts to decide whether or not we want to fix this stuff. And so I think it'll be interesting to see where those numbers go in the next year or two, whether they continue to go down. These numbers are, I looked at national restaurant companies, and these numbers are right in line. So we're not any different than anybody else. But it's between 1.5 and 1.8 is what most national restaurant companies are spending on repair and maintenance. So, okay.
All right, well, fine.
I'm done. Thank you, guys.
That's it.